Hey there, tonight we're not drifting into castles or old forests, we're stepping into something colder, stricter, a world made of lines, silence and long waits for nothing. We're going back to the Soviet Union. Not the heroic posters or victory parades, but the quiet parts, the cramped kitchens, the ration cards, the hushed conversations held just below a whisper. This is a story about what it really meant to survive under the Red Banner. Not to thrive, not to rise, just to make it to tomorrow. Because in a place where truth was dangerous and comfort was rationed, even one day could break you. If these slow, immersive journeys help you relax or unwind, feel free to like the video. It truly helps more than you know. Subscribe if you'd like to come back to this kind of quiet, uncomfortable history. And drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is. It's always strangely comforting to see all the quiet corners of the world joining together in the dark. So settle in, maybe turn the lights low, wrap up in something warm. Let's see why a single day in the USSR might have been more than you could handle. The room is freezing. Not just chilly, not put on a sweater cold, it's bone deep. The kind of cold that bites before your eyes are even open. You slept in your clothes, under 2 wool blankets, next to a brick you warmed on the stove last night. Still, your breath fogs in the air. The windows are laced with ice from the inside, and you haven't even sat up yet. That's how your day begins in the Soviet Union. And that's your first lesson. Comfort is not the baseline, it's a reward. If you're lucky, you don't talk, not yet. Words are precious here, and the walls are thin. Thin in the literal sense, crumbling plaster over concrete, but also in the other sense, the watching sense. You don't say things in the kitchen, you don't speak your thoughts near windows. You never assume you're alone. Your mother is already up, lighting the stove with fingers numb from scrubbing floor tiles for other people. She's not humming. No one hums. Not in this apartment block. Not when every sound might be mistaken for something else. Whistling, suspicious, laughter, unwise. Silence is what's safe. You cross the room carefully. The linoleum is cracked and cold under your feet. The wallpaper peels in one corner, revealing cement. There's a family portrait nailed just above the radiator that doesn't work. It hangs slightly crooked, like it's tired too. There's no hot water. There hasn't been for weeks. You splash your face with something near freezing. Gasp. Wipe yourself off with a towel that smells faintly of coal dust. That's the smell that clings to everything. Coal, boiled cabbage and fear. Not sharp fear, just the background kind. The kind that settles in your lungs. You open the cupboard. 3 potatoes. A half loaf of black bread going hard. 1 glass jar of something pickled. Cucumbers maybe. You already know what you'll eat. The same thing as yesterday. And the day before that. You don't complain. Because complaining doesn't make anything better. And sometimes it makes things worse. You don't eat because you're hungry, you eat because now is when the food is there. Maybe, if you're early, if the delivery actually came, if the woman behind the counter feels like acknowledging your presence. The queue is already formed by the time you get there, wrapped around the block, silent, wrapped in scarves and suspicion, everyone looking down, everyone counting the people in front of them, mentally calculating whether they'll make it in time. That's how food works here. That's how everything works here. You wait quietly, patiently, for sugar, for boots, for aspirin, for fuel, for information, for permission. You ask what the line is for. No one answers right away. Finally, someone mutters, "They said butter." They said, no confirmation, no sign, no certainty. Just they, the invisible authority that may or may not deliver. So you stand, because if it's butter and you miss it, that's it. Weeks without, maybe months. You're not even sure what you'll trade to get some if it runs out. Soap? Razor blades? The last pack of tea you were saving for New Year? You pass the time by watching the pigeons shiver on the roof ledges. You breathe through your scarf, your toes go numb. Someone coughs behind you. No one turns around. A woman up front is turned away. She stayed too long at work. By the time she got here, the butter was already gone. Her face doesn't change. No anger, no protest. Just the slow sag of someone who expected this. She walks away, holding nothing. Inside the shop, the shelves are bare except for a single pyramid of canned fish. Same brand, same size, stacked like a joke. The clerk doesn't make eye contact. She looks through you, past you, beyond you. You get your butter, barely. 2 sticks, wax paper wrapped, already soft from the warmth of the shop. You hold them close like they're precious, because they are. You don't celebrate. You don't talk about it in the hallway on the way home. You just go, because everyone saw you in the line. And envy has a long memory. You step back inside the apartment building, same cracked tile floor, same flickering bulb overhead. It buzzes like it wants to go out. It's been threatening to die for weeks, like a lot of things. You climb the stairs slowly, listening. Someone's arguing 2 floors up, low, sharp voices. It might be a couple, or it might be something else. You don't stop to find out. You don't linger near closed doors. That's not just courtesy, that's survival. Because here's the truth no one says out loud. You don't know who's listening, but someone always is. The walls have ears. Sometimes literally. That's not paranoia. That's policy. You remember when your neighbour vanished? One day he was here, hammering a shelf into the wall too late at night. The next day, nothing. No footsteps. No music from the radio. Just a strange emptiness in the hallway, like something had been cut out of the air. His name was quietly erased, and no one ever asked why, or where he went. They just avoided the topic like a stain that wouldn't scrub out. You don't tell jokes about the government, even when they're funny, even when they're old and everyone knows them. You don't say anything that might sound like a complaint in front of the wrong people. You never correct someone who quotes the newspaper. You nod, maybe. Keep your thoughts buried deep behind your teeth. Even children know. They grow up learning how to lower their voices, how to answer questions with blank stares, how to smile and agree. The little ones get told bedtime stories with no villains, just vague dangers. Wolves, accidents, the kind of things no one can trace. You once spoke your mind in a classroom. Once. A simple question about the bread shortage. Your teacher paused. She smiled too widely, then changed the subject. That night, your mother sat you down and told you to never do that again. Not because she was afraid of punishment, because she was afraid of disappearing. So now, you nod. You parrot headlines. You speak only when needed. You keep your real opinions folded tight, like ration paper stuffed under the mattress. The best kind of citizen here isn't the loud one or the proud one. It's the invisible one, the one who says little, asks less, and walks home like they have nothing to hide. You step into the apartment and close the door quietly, not for courtesy, for habit. Sound travels, and so does gossip. The lock clicks behind you, a metal groan you've heard 1,000 times. You turn the handle twice to be sure. Not because it keeps people out, but because it gives the illusion it might. The apartment smells like boiled cabbage and old dust. It always does. No matter how often you clean, how many lemon peels you leave on the radiator. That scent is in the walls, in the curtains, in your clothes, and maybe in you. You hang your coat near the stove where it might dry a little. The wallpaper by the entrance peels in long, curling strips. A dark water stain has bloomed across the ceiling like a map no one can read. You ignore it. You've written a complaint. Everyone has. Nothing changes. That's because the apartment is not yours. None of it is. The space was assigned to you. You don't pay rent so much as prove you deserve to stay. You can be relocated at any time. If the party decides someone needs the space more, if you say the wrong thing, if you become a problem. 3 people share this 2-room unit. 4, if you count the cousin who sometimes sleeps on the floor. The neighbour across the hall has 6 in the same amount of space. You hear their baby cry through the pipes. You hear their toilet flush through your wall. The rooms are divided not by walls but by furniture. A shelf becomes a border. A rug becomes territory. You navigate it all in silence and sideways glances. Shared space teaches you to move small, speak low, cook fast. The kitchen is barely large enough for 1 person, yet somehow always has 3. You shuffle past elbows and boiling pots. You reach for the kettle and find it missing. Again. You don't ask who took it. You boil water in a saucepan instead. The hallway light flickers. You flip the switch off, then on again. Still flickers, still broken. You don't report it. There's no point. A man came to inspect it 6 months ago. Said he'd return with the part. You haven't seen him since. The walls are thin, the windows leak, the floor groans like it resents your weight. And still you are grateful for it, because someone out there is on a waiting list. Someone is sleeping in a hostel bunk, someone is sleeping in the stairwell, and you have a room with a door. For now. It's late now. Not dark exactly, just grey. The kind of colour that settles in over the city and doesn't lift for months. You don't check the time, you check your stomach and it tells you it's time to eat. Not because you're hungry, you were hungry hours ago, but because this is when you eat, when everyone's finally home, when there's a lull in the worry. The kitchen is small, 1 window fogged with condensation, a table scarred with burn marks from pots and cigarette ash, 1 working burner. You have to tilt the pan just right so it heats evenly. You've learned the angle by heart. You open the fridge. It hums with effort but barely cools. Inside, a jar of pickled tomatoes, half an onion, a chipped glass of sunflower oil, and a single sagging carrot. Not enough for a recipe, but enough for a meal. That's the rule here. You don't cook with what you want. You cook with what you have. You boil water in a dented pot. Add buckwheat, the last scoop from the paper sack folded in the cupboard. You chop the carrot fine to make it look like more. You saute the onion in oil. Then add a spoonful of the tomato brine. It smells sharp, tangy, almost like flavour. It'll feed 3, barely. But it's hot, and it's food. There's no meat. There rarely is. When there is, it's rationed, or it's sausage that tastes more of bread than flesh. You learned long ago not to ask what's in it. You slice bread thin, black bread, dense, heavy, sour. You toast it near the flame to soften the edge. It doesn't help much, but it makes the crust smell like something. Your mother adds a spoonful of mustard to hers. Your brother adds salt. You eat it plain. Dinner is quiet, always. No music, no television. Just forks on plates, steam rising from the pot. You chew slow, not for manners, but to stretch the experience. Because you know there won't be more. There's always enough to not starve, rarely enough to be full. You clean your plate with the last crust. You don't waste. Not a grain, not a smear. Your stomach still aches, but you tell yourself it doesn't. You drink tea, black, bitter, overbrewed, and pretend it fills the space that food didn't. And tomorrow, you'll do it again, because you have no choice, and because the hunger waits patiently. It never rings, but it could. The phone hangs in the hallway, mounted on crack plaster. Black, plastic, heavy. The kind of phone that hums with quiet threat. You don't call anyone on it. You barely touch it. It isn't there for you. That's trick number 1 in the unspoken manual of Soviet survival. Some things in your home aren't really yours. The cord is twisted from years of cautious conversations. The earpiece is warm from hands that never fully relax while holding it. You speak quickly when you use it, clearly, politely, like someone else is always on the other end, even when they're not, because maybe they are. No one says the phone is tapped. No one needs to. You just know. You've heard the clicks, the delays, the way it sometimes doesn't give a dial tone unless you hang up and try again. And the way your father once stared at it for a full minute before picking it up to call in sick. When it rings, which is rare, everyone freezes. Someone always answers by the third ring. It's just what you do. You never let it ring too long. Too much noise. Too much notice. It could be the factory, it could be the housing office, it could be them. You don't say names over the phone, you don't joke, you don't curse, you don't speak of politics, or shortages, or complaints. You use formal greetings, speak like you're being read aloud, and you always say goodbye with a full name, just in case it matters. Your uncle once received a call at midnight. No one ever found out what was said. He left the next day with a suitcase and didn't come back. The family says he found work in another city. You've stopped believing that story. Some people unplug the phone when they drink. Others just leave it off the hook and say it's broken. But no one gets rid of it. That would be noticed. That would be wrong. It's better to have it. Better to let it sit there, quiet and listening, than to risk explaining why you thought you didn't need it anymore. And so it hangs, black, silent, always waiting. You show up on time, you punch your card, you wear the same boots you wore yesterday, and the day before that, and the day before that. You keep your head down and your tools in order. You nod when you're spoken to. You don't speak unless asked. This is how you survive Soviet work, because here's the rule. You must work hard enough to avoid suspicion, but never so well that someone notices. Do your job too slowly and you're lazy, disloyal, a burden on the collective. Do your job too well and you stand out. Get promoted, get noticed. And being noticed is dangerous. You've seen it before. A man with bright ideas fixes things faster, asks why the machines keep breaking, talks about shortages like he's surprised by them. A month later, he's relocated. No goodbye. Just an empty locker and his name scrubbed from the duty sheet. So you work just fast enough. You fix what you can with what you have, usually not much. Broken tools, rusty bolts, outdated schematics printed on brittle paper. You find ways to make do. A piece of wire from home, a borrowed wrench, a personal favour quietly repaid. You meet your quotas, you fill out the paperwork, you pretend the system works. Your supervisor doesn't care about efficiency. He cares about appearance, numbers on paper, clean boots in photographs, loyalty pinned to your coat. If he likes you, he gives you fewer hours. If he doesn't, you get the night shift, or worse, extra meetings. And then there's the wall of names, the heroes. Portraits of workers who exceeded production targets. One of them used to live in your building. He got a medal, then a transfer. No one's seen him in years. You carry your lunch in newspaper. You eat it quietly on a broken bench with co-workers who only speak in half-truths and glances. You all know the same things. You just don't say them out loud. You write nothing down. You keep no journals. You talk to no one about your dreams. You leave your ambition at the door. It doesn't serve you here. Because in this place, success is a spotlight. And spotlights don't warm you. They burn. You know how to lie. Not big lies, not bold ones. Just the small, necessary kind. The kind that smooth over edges and keep you from being remembered. Because in the USSR, the truth is a private thing. That's not metaphor. That's survival. You lie when someone asks how your job is. It's fine. You lie when someone asks if you heard the news. Of course, wonderful progress. You lie when someone asks what you really think. I don't think much at all. Not because you're a coward, but because truth is too expensive to carry openly. Your real thoughts are like contraband, wrapped tightly, stored deep, never shown in public. You learn the difference between what's true and what's safe, what's real and what's allowed. The state doesn't care what's in your head, only what slips out of your mouth. So you talk in code, you master the nod, the pause, the lifted eyebrow. You say things like, "He's very enthusiastic," when you mean he's a fool. You say, "She asks a lot of questions," when you mean she's dangerous. You know which neighbours are safe. You know which ones are listening. You keep track of who always seems to be just nearby. Your grandfather once said too much at a train station. Just a joke, barely a sentence. There were 5 people in the carriage. One of them reported him. He lost his job within a week. Your family didn't speak during supper for a month after that. You learned to lower your voice early. In school, you learned that even children could be good citizens if they told the right adult the right thing. You never spoke about what your parents whispered at night. You didn't even ask. Sometimes, you catch yourself lying when you don't need to a friend, to a relative, just out of instinct, just to keep the pattern going. You don't even think of it as lying anymore. It's breathing. And sometimes, late when the windows are shut and the lights are off, you whisper the truth to yourself. Just once, just to remember the shape of it. But only if you're sure no one's listening. Because out here, the truth doesn't set you free. It gets you followed. You avoid them if you can. Hospitals, clinics, even the word itself leaves a sour taste. Not because you're afraid of pain. You're used to that. It's because in the USSR, hospitals are where you go to vanish slowly, not to heal. You walk past one on your way home from work. Grey concrete, windows fogged over from the inside. A sour chemical smell drifts out the door when it opens. You hold your breath. You keep walking. The last time you went in was for a fever. Just a fever. But you waited 7 hours to be seen. The nurse didn't look up. The doctor asked 2 questions, didn't touch you, and prescribed aspirin and rest. Neither of which you had. You went home sicker than before. That's what you remember most. Not the illness, but the feeling of not being seen. Inside the ward, beds line the walls like graves waiting for names. No privacy, no partitions. Just bodies and sighs and the sharp, steady beep of a machine you don't trust to work. People talk in low voices like they're trying not to disturb death itself. The sheets are clean mostly, the walls are peeling. You bring your own medicine, your own food, your own spoon if you want one. Family visits aren't just emotional, they're logistical. If they don't bring what you need, you go without. Doctors do what they can, but they're stretched thin, underpaid, undersupplied, trained on books from the 1950s and bribed with bottles of cognac. You don't blame them, you just don't trust them. And then there's the file, the medical history, the thing that follows you everywhere. Once you're labelled, nervous, difficult, troublesome, that's who you are forever. A note in a drawer can cost you a job, or a visa, or a future, so you don't go. You treat headaches with tea and superstition. You treat sprains with vodka and rags. You ask the oldest woman on your floor what to boil, what to rub on your chest, what to chew before sleep. You endure pain like you endure the weather, and you pray that whatever's wrong will pass. Because if it doesn't, the hospital won't save you. It'll just make you easier to forget. You read the newspaper every morning. It's not optional. It arrives like clockwork, folded neatly, placed at your doorstep or in the communal slot by the stairs. Pravda, Izvestia. Sometimes a bulletin posted outside the market. Bold headlines. Columns of certainty. Photographs of smiling men in coats and medals. But you don't read it to learn something. You read it to see what you're supposed to believe that day, because the news here isn't a window to the world, it's a mirror that reflects back only what you're allowed to see. Every page is filled with victories, a record harvest, a new factory, a medal awarded to someone for exceptional loyalty, always progress, always unity, always better than the West. No mention of the sugar shortage, no line count from the bread queue. No questions about where the missing minister went. No explanation for why the lights keep flickering, or why the train skips every other stop now. You read between the lines. You read what's missing. Your father used to circle small articles in red pencil. Nothing seditious, just the quiet details. A reorganization here, a name removed there. It was his way of reading the real story, piecing it together from the gaps. He stopped after someone asked why he was marking things. You still remember how he folded the paper twice before throwing it away. Radio's no better. You twist the knob gently, as if searching for honesty, like a frequency just beyond the edge of the dial. But every voice says the same thing. We are thriving. We are strong. We are one. You listen anyway, not for information, but for tone, for slips, for the edge in the voice of a broadcaster who knows they're reading something false. You trust that edge more than you trust the facts. Sometimes someone whispers about foreign broadcasts. The BBC, Voice of America. You know a man who built a receiver in his basement. He only turns it on after midnight, and only with blankets stuffed under the door. You've never heard it, but you believe it exists, because here the truth isn't printed. It's protected, carried in hushed voices, in sideways glances, in nods over tea. The news may tell you the sky is blue, even when it's raining, and your job is not to argue. Your job is to nod and keep your questions quiet. You laugh with them, share bread with them, stand next to them in line for hours, trade recipes, trade rumors, trade tiny comforts like matches and dry socks. But somewhere, quietly, carefully, you remember one thing. They could ruin you. That's not drama. That's not paranoia. That's Soviet reality. Because even your closest friend might one day be forced to choose between you and themselves. Between your secret, what you said, what you asked, and their job, their child's future, their life. And no matter how close you are, survival speaks louder than loyalty. You don't blame them, not fully. You just plan for it. You keep conversations clean. You never say anything that couldn't be repeated. You measure every sentence not by truth, but by how it might sound if quoted. You remind yourself there is no such thing as off the record in a system that never turns off. You've seen what happens. A man disappears after a meeting. Rumour says his own cousin reported him. Said he made a joke about the Premier. No one knows if it was true. But now there's an empty chair at the table. And 2 days later, the cousin has a new apartment. Coincidence? You choose your words like a blacksmith chooses iron. Only what's necessary, nothing brittle. You learn to laugh without revealing too much, to change the subject without seeming afraid. The ones who talk too freely don't last. The ones who listen too closely, they rise. The KGB doesn't need spies. Not when fear turns neighbours into informants. Not when you're trained from birth to listen, record, report. So when your friend says, "Don't worry, it's just between us," you smile, but you say nothing more. And later that night, when you think back on the conversation, you replay every word you said, just in case, because in this world, betrayal doesn't come from enemies. It comes from people who know your middle name. You hesitate before writing anything, even a grocery list, even a birthday card, because in the Soviet Union, paper remembers longer than people do, and it speaks louder. A single sentence can echo for years. A word scribbled in frustration can become a statement of intent if someone decides to read it the wrong way. You've seen it happen. A coworker kept a notebook. Nothing subversive, just thoughts, quotes, complaints about the workday. Someone found it, turned it in. The next week he was gone, his desk cleared, his name redacted from the bulletin board. The factory pretended he never existed. You never found out what line got him in trouble. So now you don't write unless you must. You fill out your ration forms with perfect handwriting. You complete your work reports with bland, practiced phrases. You sign your name exactly the same every time. No flourish, no deviation. You don't keep a diary. You burn letters after reading. If you want to say something real, you say it in the stairwell, with the radio on, with the window open. And even then you choose every word like it's evidence. At school, they teach you cursive, grammar, ideology. But they don't teach you what not to write. You learn that on your own, watching others fall. There's a file with your name on it somewhere. Probably more than one. You've never seen it. You never will. But you know it's there. Notes from your teacher, from your boss. From that one time you hesitated before clapping at a meeting. They say records are routine, harmless. But in this world, routine is a weapon. You envy the old woman on your floor. Illiterate, can't read, can't write. She always says, "My mind is clean." Maybe she's right. Sometimes you hold a pen and feel like it's a knife. Not one you use, but one used on you. So you set it down, you speak less, and you leave nothing behind that could be copied, misread, or pinned to a file you'll never see. Because in the USSR, memory fades, but paper lives forever. The cold doesn't arrive gently, it crashes in. The wind turns sharp like broken glass, and the buildings huddle against it like they know what's coming. Pipes groan, windows rattle. People disappear into their coats and don't come out again until April. In the USSR, winter isn't just a time of year. It's a measure of your will. You learn to layer. Wool over linen, cotton over wool. You stuff newspapers into your boots. You wrap scarves twice, sometimes 3 times. Your hands are red, then white, then numb. You learn how long you can stand outside before your teeth stop moving properly. The radiator in your apartment might work, might not. It clanks once like it's trying. Then it settles into silence. You light candles. You heat bricks on the stove and place them in your bed. You sleep in your coat. You don't complain. Complaining doesn't warm the room. Outside, the streets are grey with ice and slush. Salt is precious, mostly saved for the kitchen. The sidewalks are uneven, broken by frost years ago and never repaired. You walk carefully, knees slightly bent, eyes always scanning for a patch that might kill you. The buses still run, sort of. You stand in line in the dark, waiting for a metal box full of steam and strangers. You board with wet feet and hold onto a frozen pole that burns like fire when touched bare-handed. In the village, people stack wood all year for winter, not for comfort, for survival. If your fire goes out in January, you don't have time to light a new one before the cold finds you. You keep kindling close, matches closer. The government prints posters about heroic snow-clearing brigades. You've never seen one. You clear your own path with a dented shovel and numb fingers. The wind fills it in again before you've finished. And still, you endure. Because you must. Because spring only comes for those who last. You don't count days by the calendar. You count them by frost on the inside of your window. By the number of socks you wear to bed, by the taste of canned cabbage and hope. Out here, winter isn't about snow. It's about proving you're still here when it ends. You walk into the shop and pretend to be surprised. That's part of the script. Eyes wide, polite nod to the clerk, slow stroll past the shelves, as if you didn't already know what you wouldn't find. And there it is. The stage set. Rows of empty metal shelves, one lonely pyramid of canned peas, a stack of identical soaps with no scent, A single crate of limp beets under a sign that reads, "Fresh from the motherland." You stand and look at it all like you're trying to decide, like you're comparing options, like you might walk out with something better than disappointment. Because in the USSR, the store isn't about choice, it's about performance. The workers behind the counter don't speak. Their eyes are tired in a way that doesn't go away with sleep. You hand over your ration book. The pages are thin from use. One corner is missing. You pray they don't notice. They don't. You ask for sugar. They say, "Not today." You ask for milk. They smirk. You nod. You thank them. You leave with 2 carrots and half a loaf of bread you didn't want. And you are grateful. That's how the theatre works. Outside, someone asks you quietly if there's meat inside. You shake your head. They don't look surprised, just tired, like they've been walking the city all morning, asking the same question. Sometimes there's a delivery. Rumours start before the truck even arrives. You hear whispers in the stairwell, someone tapping on a pipe 2 floors up. You grab your bag, your coat, your dignity, and you run. And when the truck finally parks, the whole street leans toward it, breathless, eyes on the crates. What's there? Butter or boots? Maybe nothing. The back swings open and people rush forward, but not too fast. Not like they're greedy. You must appear composed, even when your hands shake. You might come home with a prize, a bottle of oil, a tin of sardines. You won't eat it today. You'll save it for a guest, for winter, for when you need to feel like a person again. Because that's the cruelest part of this theatre. Sometimes the act is all you have, and pretending there's plenty. That's just part of the show. New Year's, the one bright point on the calendar, the state-endorsed celebration, not religious, not revolutionary, just permitted, barely. You're expected to enjoy it. You're told to enjoy it. Banners appear across city squares. Buses play tinny recordings of choirs singing about snow and light. Stores fill their windows with dusty plastic pine trees and cardboard cutouts of Father Frost. But you know the truth. The holidays are just another shift, only colder and more polite. You still wake before dawn, still stand in line, still scrub the floor until your knees ache. Maybe there's a little more food on the table, maybe not. Maybe a neighbour comes by with half a cake and a bottle wrapped in newspaper. You smile, you share, and for a moment you pretend this is what joy feels like. At work, they hand out small boxes with dried oranges, hard candy, and 1 chocolate. You hide yours in a drawer. It's not to eat, it's to show someone later as proof. Look, we celebrated. Children get a tree if they're lucky, a real one if someone knows someone. You decorate it with string, bits of foil, an old light bulb that no longer works but still looks like it might. You tell stories. You sing softly, so no one outside the walls hears a foreign tune. There's a speech too, always a speech, broadcast on every channel, on every station. A voice that sounds like metal being polished, wishing everyone health, productivity, unity. You sit, you watch, you clap when the family claps, you drink. Not to celebrate, but to forget the year, the missing, the cold, the list of things you wanted to say and didn't. Then you toast again, to peace, to survival, to nothing changing, and everyone pretending it has. Midnight comes. Someone sets off a firework they shouldn't have had. You hear it echo over the buildings like a crack in the silence. The child beside you shouts, "Happy New Year," with real joy. You don't correct them, because for them, it might still be magic. For you, it's just another day, just with more tinsel. So that's the day, just one. Wake up cold, watch what you say, line up, nod, disappear into the work, into the silence, into the shape of a life built not to shine, but to endure. It wasn't the gulags that wore people down. Not always. It was the grind, the stillness, the pretending, the endless, quiet battle just to remain unnoticed. That was the trick. That was the game. Surviving the Soviet Union didn't mean being brave. It meant being careful, being small, being exactly enough to avoid being remembered. And still, people laughed, loved, shared, sang softly, passed stories, passed tea, passed tiny pieces of themselves in stairwells and kitchens and winter courtyards. If this video helped you wind down or brought you somewhere you've never been, consider liking it. It helps more than you know. Subscribe if you'd like more quiet stories like this. And if you're still awake, leave a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is. It's always strangely comforting to see the world tucked in together. So turn off the lights, let the day fade, and remember, survival isn't always about strength. Sometimes it's just silence that lasts. Sleep well.